what the deal, what the business is. You already know it's not rhetorical. That's a real question. What the business is. And today the business is project management. Yeah, when you endeavor into these endeavors, that oftentimes you're going to run into a situation where if you're not doing the project management, you're part of the team that's in charge of the project management. So we're going to really get into the levels of what that is, what everybody's responsibility is, and how to get a project to run real smooth and don't have any glitches in your matrix as you build and grow. So we thank everybody for tuning in. Thank you for your support. We thank you for all that you do for the guidance and all that thing that we're doing while we're trying to build the Ramble podcast, and all the people that we reached out to for any kind of guidance, for any kind of support while we're building this. And as we grow, there's going to be learning curves as we do this ourselves. So what we're trying to do is lessen any kind of learning curve that you have while you're doing your building and you're growing. So lately we've been reaching out to different people to kind of help us with the audio cleanup, our intro and outro. We're working on that too as well. But we want you to kind of see the growth of the podcast as well, so you can help to do better, or so that it can help you do better when you're starting out your podcast or when you're starting out your endeavors. So don't be afraid of the mistakes you made. Don't be afraid of any kind of hurdles or anything like that, because each one teach one, and what we're trying to do is trying to help you have a smoother transition from whatever you're doing into whatever you're really trying to do. So, like I said, this one is called Project Management, and a lot lately has been having a lot of, not really glitches, but or problems, but really learning that you gotta have a tight crew, a tight overstanding and reasoning, steady meetings and things like that to make sure that your project is running good, make sure your project is running smooth, because sometimes you'll leave something up to someone to do or figure out or handle. And they may be able to do it, figure it out, handle it, and all of those things too. But you need to be aware of what's going on. So just in case anyone proposition you in terms of A, B, or C, you're well aware too as well. So it's a real team and a group effort when it comes to trying to bring a project to fruition. So all we're trying to do is trying to help you go from where you've decided you want to do a project or endeavor into something, to just have smooth process while you're doing that thing. So, but the definition of project management, like we want to start out with the definition of what we're talking about, so we can both have so we all can have an understanding of what we're talking about. But it's really the process of leading the work of a team to accomplish the project goals from start to finish within the time frame that's agreed upon. And so you have your project, y'all sat down, you had your talks, and this is what you're trying to do. There's typically a time frame when you're going to start. There's going to be one where there's going to a middle part to that project, and then there's the ending part of that project. But it's always good that you have weekly meetings, status meetings, really, to update each other so everybody know where we are. Is there anything missing? Is there anything needed? So that your project can always run as smooth as possible, or that you learn from what happened on this particular project, implement it on the next one and the next one and the next one, so you have a systematical movement and know who to call, when to call, why to call on everything going forward, so you don't have any kind of problem in your project. And that's project management. That's just one main phase of the project. And typically with that too, now you have that agreement where you have everybody's goals, everybody's direction, and what's expected of everybody. And that's always done, or should be done, in the beginning of the project, where you sit down and you have your documentation or your contract and say, I'm contracting you to do this. And what this is I need you to help me build this house, whether it's from scratch, start to finish, or you're doing a rehab and you're doing some kind of assessment to find out, okay, I got a good frame, because that's typically what it starts with. You want to make sure you have a good frame, a good foundation to build on, But if that foundation is shaky or rocky or it's not good, you got a house that got termites, all of these things you want to assess in the beginning of the project to find out where we need to go to start from scratch so you have a good solid foundation to build on. So you always want to have that agreement in the front where this is the goals of the project, and you write that up in your contract. You have that in your agreement, so you make sure you have an understanding of what everyone is expected to do. You as the owner of the project, you as the owner of the house, the building, or whatever the project is, you need to convey all of what you expect clearly in your contract and clearly as you describe them when you're talking to whoever's going to be in charge of the project management of building your endeavor. So you always want to make sure you guys have a good understanding of what's going on, what you expect from this person, that person, and then they go forward, and then you'll have the scope of work, and that'll give you the obligation of everybody that needs to be done to get the project done, the things that's needed to be done to get the project rolling and finished in a timely manner. There's always going to be, not say always, because after you have this done systematically, it's going to be less and less. But with supply issues and with all these kind of different things, you're going to have some problems. So that's why you always want to formalize and have a great team so that they can always know how to pivot, how to make changes. This might be out of stock, but it's okay to use that. So you always want to even fine tune it to even have those kind of discussions too. We were planning on painting the walls eggshell instead of white, but we don't have enough. But if they have enough of the off-white or what have you, can we do this? And if the answer is no, always check before any kind of decisions is made. You kind of want to label out what decisions can be made independent of the person doing the project management as opposed to the owner of the project. Because the owner of the project, you have your vision in mind of the end result. So anything made in terms of decisions that you're not aware of affects the project, because there are different things you might be doing based upon this. If you expect to have 3 rooms at a certain width and length, and then you plan on renting those rooms out based on those, then you run into a situation where you may not be able to accommodate that, or something as simple as the paint. Like I said, you always want to stipulate who's has the final say in the decision and what leeway are allowed, because those things allow your project to go much more easier. Because as an owner, as a builder, a creator, a designer, or whoever, you might not be able to be in town, but you're facilitating these things over the phone. You might be in meetings and they're calling you, reaching out to you, and not able to get you, but they need to keep the project moving. So you don't want to have a crew, you don't want to have guys waiting, unable to do work based on a decision. So you always want to make sure you empower, and people you empower have the ability to make all kind of decisions within the scope of what you know is allowed, because you want to make sure that project is done good, done right, and done on time. And one of the some of these challenges that you might have, not just primary, but you'll have secondary challenges too as well, but you'll always want to stipulate the budget for the project, and those things are done in the main meeting. There's other people that are brought on during the course of the job, during the course of the project, which are your subcontractors, your subs, and the items that you're buying from this place or that place, and those things too. But you want to have an overall budget for the project, and your job as someone who are not your job, but as in the scope of what you're doing, you want to make sure the budget is laid out clearly and defined, so that you don't have any kind of shorts in what you're trying to accomplish. Some resources can be allocated here, and here, but you want to make sure there's some staples that means a lot to you. So that's why a clear definition is really important, because you don't want to have a lack here where you could have had it somewhere else, when you know that this particular part of the job was in your mind a deal breaker. This particular part of the job was needed as opposed to this one over here. You could have waited on a decision for this. You could have waited on a decision for that. But this right here is a definite. Don't move until we get this in place or that in place. So that's why I was talking to a couple of the guys that I'm working with now, and one of the things that we had to work on, and I knew I had to work on too, was make sure I communicated more to them on giving them a project status. We were basically having an agreement, and then we were working on it, and they were doing whatever else they had to do in terms of other projects and other things like that. But I had to make sure if I didn't hear from them in a couple of days or a week, it just depended on the size of the project, to make sure I reach out to them and say, okay, look, this is where we're at in terms of the project. I know you feel and know everything is going good, running smooth, but it is going good and it is running smooth. Are there any concerns that you have? Are there any things that you're thinking about? Are there any possible changes? Because you always want to make sure that you have good communication with, especially as a sub or sub, wherever you are in the chain of command in terms of the building of that project. You always want to make sure you have crystal clear communication, because that will always throw the budget off, because you're talking about time, you're talking about time and material, you're talking about labor, you're talking about sometimes certain crews have to bring in certain people to do some parts of the job. Those guys may not be there for the whole project duration, but they're brought in to take care of this, that, and that. You know, they're detail-oriented jobs, then there's jobs where you can kind of go with what's going on, but you always want to have this a systematical program to what's going on, because that's going to definitely help your project to go smooth. It's going to help your project to go much more quicker, and it's going to build and foster that relationship between you and that business owner, so that they on their next project, on their next endeavor, they'll know they'll definitely reach out to you to handle this or you to take care of that, because they know you have a tried and true system that you implement. Oftentimes you're working with the same crew, so there's certain things that you watch and look for as someone hiring someone for the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth time. You know, they might be a big company where it is different crews that they have, but are they delivering on the thoughts and agreement that you guys have? So you want to make sure that things run smooth in terms of taking care of the budget. And as someone who's managing the project, you want to make sure you make good or proper decisions with the budget, because that can definitely cause the project to come to a halt. It can definitely cause you and the project manager, the owner of the company, to have a falling out, to have a disagreement, to have any kind of problems. You want to make sure you alleviate, you minimize them, because there's gonna be misunderstanding, but you want to make sure that you lessen those or minimize those. And you definitely want to adhere to the main principle that the objective or the goal of the person out in charge of the project management is to make sure that the needs, the clear thoughts and requirements of the client is met by everybody that you hire, your subs, all of the objectives of that client. You make sure you listen to in the meetings. You make sure you listen in that initial walkthrough. You make sure, like we say in all previous episodes, man, you can't take. I can't emphasize enough to have your notebooks, your notepads, and all of these things to make sure you're taking notes and documenting what's going on, what's being said, so that they know that you care about the project. You're taking notes. You're not just hoping that going by this so-called photographic memory that you have. Yeah, I'll remember that later. More often than not, you're not going to remember that later on, but what you will remember is what you write down. So you want to make sure that you have your pen and pad and nearby or on hand, so that as soon as you start that meeting, as soon as you and the client, that customer is having that initial talk and walkthrough, you're taking notes and you're making sure you're finding out what's their objective, what are their goals, what are their expectations, so that you can make sure you meet and exceed them and as much as you can, and you're on budget. You're pre-planning. You're finding out the cost of this material, that material, especially in these times where certain costs have gone up and none have really gone down. So you want to make sure you let the customer know as much as possible, what idealistic and realistic costs are going to be, because they might have been in this for a while and they know what costs used to be, and they're on a different project now that now requires something they haven't bought in quite some time. The cost of drywall goes up. It fluctuates, and it's at a steady 2x4s. Certain basic building material costs have gone up. So someone who may not have used drop ceiling, which is a suspended ceiling with the ceiling tile and the ceiling grid, who haven't used that in a while, and now they're using it on this particular project because you may have ducts in the ceiling, you may have different obstacles in the ceiling where you're not able to kind of wrap the drywall around for it to look aesthetically pleasing. So you want a smooth, straight across the room's feel. So you might end up going with a drop ceiling where your ceiling height might be less than optimum, or it might be less than what you would like, but it actually give a crisp, clean look doing it in a drop ceiling. And those costs have gone up now, and you got to make sure you take the time from when you're actually doing the walkthrough with the customer and assessing what their clear needs are, to take the couple of days or a day to find out the exact cost of what building materials are, the exact cost of what this or that is going to be. So you're not in a rush. Even though they might be in a rush, you let them know, I might need a day or two, and they'll understand. It's just oftentimes they might need that cost now or within a day or two, to make sure that they're being able to handle or take care of what they're taking care of in terms of securing the finances or getting the proper number in order to submit to the bank for approval. All of these different things. So you want to make sure you let them know where you find out exactly what are their needs. What is the finished look that you're going for? Is there any special needs that you're thinking that you might have? Do you want all your devices to be a certain color? Do you want this? You finding out all the exact needs, all the exact requirements, because it's not back in the day where it was just a basic outlet that everybody wanted to install, just a regular toggle switch. Now they have smart switches. Now they have devices and outlets that have the USB capabilities. So you want to make sure you find out what are the needs and all of those things, because obviously every one of those things is a cost. So you want to make sure you give them the correct cost based on what market price is now. And anywhere you can save your customer or your client a cost, always do that, because it goes a long way for your business credibility. It goes a long way for your credibility. So you're not there just trying to make the money. You're there trying to build a relationship and knowing that making the money will always be there. You're not there doing the job for free. You're there just providing the best service overall. And a lot of times some of that service is how you can clearly save your customer some costs. And it's a lot of the decisions that are made along the time the course of the project, it affects costs. So you want to make sure you have a clear understanding of what the client needs are, because obviously the needs influence cost. And you want to make sure that you know all of their clients' needs, because now, as the person doing the project management, you want to make sure that the subcontractors you bring in, because as the project manager, which is the person in charge of managing the project, two different things. The project management is the overall goals of what you're trying to accomplish, and the project manager is one who implements and makes sure the goals, the objective are clearly implemented as stipulated by the client. So you want to make sure you have a clear understanding of what the client expects. because if the client is out of town, if the client is very busy, and as a client, you definitely want to check in on your project. Even if it's just a Zoom or a remote visual meeting, you want to definitely check on your project to make sure things are going according to what you planned and what you figured. If you're not, I would definitely recommend that you stop by your project and look around and just to see what's going on. If you're not able to do those things because of your schedule or what have you, you're definitely having a weekly meeting 2-3 times a week if need be, depending on the size and the scope of the project, to find out what's going on, where are we at. I call it a project status, and you want to make sure you have a overstanding of where the job is. Are we on time? Are we on budget? Do we need to adjust anything? And as the builder, as the person in charge of the project management, you want to make sure you include in your budget something for miscellaneous costs. And that could be something, an agreed upon number that's put aside in the bank, in escrow, in whatever, to say, okay, if we run into these glitches or these problems and we're unable to reach you, or we need to make sure, or it was a time-sensitive purchase or what have you. But make sure those things are clearly defined. Make sure those things are clearly overstood as to what a miscellaneous cost can go towards. But having a miscellaneous fund that's set aside for your project, no matter how big your project is. It could be a very small project where the miscellaneous cost might cover a paintbrush. It might cover a gallon of paint. It might cover, a hardwood floor for a room now. Or you were putting down some tile and now the room is so wavy that you need to pour some self-leveling concrete or something in there, and that wasn't in the budget. But you can't put the floor down without this concrete. You can't reach the builder. You can't reach the homeowner. But this is something that would have been approved because the project couldn't go any further without that. One of the things I definitely stress with my guys or my helpers is that there are things that we definitely need, and if we're at the store doing a phone purchase or anything like that, I would really prefer that they not spend their money if they're unable to reach the customer for a phone sale. I would prefer they definitely call me and let me make the decision as to whether I'll pay for the phone sale based on my client and I relationship, and we'll go from there. But I've had numerous people that work with me because our good relationship, and because they know the things that they're at the store for is stuff that we need to keep the project going, because that's the reason they're at the store. And they'll purchase it, bring the receipt, and we might have to submit that receipt to the client and then end up waiting on the reimbursement of that. But then my people might need that money now in order to keep themselves going. They just spent that money in the thought or assumption that they were going to get it right as soon as they bring the receipt, things like that. But there are different protocols to a job site, so you're not always reimbursed as soon as you bring that receipt. That's just how some business or some jobs are just structured, and that's just how it is. So you just need to have a clear understanding as to how it's structured, how payments is dispersed, how it's reimbursed, on all of those different things. So that's all within the purview of project management. And as the project manager, you have to make sure that everybody who's doing their job, all their decisions are influenced by the needs and the express objective of the client. You can't have someone making a decision on paint color. You can't have someone making a decision on floor color, whether you're using tile or hardwood floor, because they got it for a better price. The client might be willing to pay the cost because that's what they want. So you want to make sure that all the decisions of all your subcontractors, everybody involved in the project, is on the same accord. You don't want to have no one making a decision like that, because like I said, the builder, the client have thoughts or making other decisions and agreements, renting the space based on these expectations. They're listing the space, telling them it's going to be hardwood floor throughout. It's going to be tile, marble, countertops. All of these things are in their listing that they're putting together, so that when they have a finished product, they're now ready to post it based on all of the things that they knew were going to go in and be installed. So now if you have a sub or have someone that decide that, this is a cheaper, it looks good, but it's cheaper quality, there's a difference between quartz and marble, there's a difference between laminate and hardwood floor. There's a difference between tile and sticky and plastic tile. You can be so skilled that you lay down that vinyl tile and it looks fantastic, but it's not the same feel when someone walks in it on certain type of shoes. And that may be the look and feel that builder was going for, but you made an executive decision in the wrong way, and now you have to do double work. Now someone has to pay the expense of taking that floor up that might take a day off of the project, wasting the material. So you want to make sure all the decisions and everything that you do is based on the thoughts and the clear expectations and expressions of the client during that initial meeting and that additional scope of project, that walkthrough, and everyone understands what's to be expected of each other. I recently did, this I believe is the 14th, I recently did a walkthrough with a client that's working on the second floor of their building. And I made sure I had my notebook, my pen, and we walked through, and initially I didn't take any notes. I just wanted to get a brief walkthrough with them so I could hear, because I knew why I didn't take any notes initially. You might say, hey, take notes as soon as you start, because I knew we were going to be there for a while and we were going to be walking back and forth and going through it a couple of times. I just knew that part of it. Don't assume that every single time, because people are busy. They may not have time to do 2 or 3 walkthrough, or they may expect the first walkthrough is the only walkthrough, so be prepared. So I don't really recommend that. I'm just giving you an expression or a brief representation of one of my recent occurrence that I had to walk through with the client, and I wanted to get an overall consensus of what they were trying to accomplish, because I know they weren't ready to do the whole project, but we were going to work in some areas that wasn't ready for work, and that affects what I need to do as well. So I really was doing the initial walkthrough to kind of get a feel for what they were trying to accomplish, and then once I got a feel for that, now we did another walkthrough. We didn't start over from scratch, but now I was able to now take out my notepad, and on my notepad I briefly drew a representation of what each of those rooms were, and where they wanted the electrical outlets to be. Were they dedicated outlets? What kind of equipment were you plugging into the equipment? What kind of lighting were you needing? Is this a mood lighting type of situation, or is this reading lighting kind of situation? And things like that. How many lights did you need in per room? And one of the stipulation was it's a big room, but they didn't want the lights to all be symmetrical. On one half of the room, they only required 2 lights. And on the other half of the room, they only wanted 1. It was a recess light as well. But that's the client's specification. That's what they knew in their mind they needed. They didn't need 20 recess lights in this room. It wasn't a reading room type of situation. It wasn't a mood lighting type of situation. They just knew, based on having those lights installed in other places in the building, that this amount would suffice. And that went a long way for them as a builder too, because they knew instantly how to save themselves some costs by saying, okay, for this room it's a very big room, but we can use 3 of those recess lights properly placed, and we are good. So we went through, we drew and diagrammed all that we were trying to accomplish. I listened to all of their needs before I asked any questions, and I only asked questions where relevant, and I started asking them as I was writing. The initial walkthrough, I was just simply listening. I really didn't ask any questions, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't take any notes, because I knew it might change, and then I was going to be wasting notepad pages. And my particular notepad that I had, I didn't have that many pages to actually waste. If it was a brand new one, I might have taken notes and then flipped to another section when we did the second walkthrough. But I already had assessed what was going on. We were going to do a walkthrough maybe twice at least. So let me just listen the first time and just find out exactly what their needs are. So we did that. We walked through, and like I thought, a lot of the things changed in terms of what we were going to do, because the place wasn't fully framed out, and the architect was there as well, which was a good thing. So as many people involved in the project initially, you definitely like to have them on hand while you're doing that walkthrough. Schedule that walkthrough. Reach out to everybody, find out when they have availability, because people are busy. But you really don't want to say things 3-4 times. People are busy. So you want to try to schedule a meeting a week ahead of time, say, hey, on the 25th, can we all meet over here at 1 p.m., 8 a.m., and we'll do a walkthrough, because certain jobs, certain trades affect certain trades. Typically the plumber will have that right away, because his water has to flow in a certain type of, according to gravity, without needing a pump or all of these situations. So where I might want to put my electrical panel box might be where it's better for him to run some pipes at a different angle. So it's always kind of good when you have different trades in at the same time to kind of go over to do the walkthrough and get a real understanding of what is going on in the project. So that could be a sub meeting. The first meeting can be between the client and the person in charge of the project management, which is the project manager. So now you can have that walkthrough with them and get all of that information, because that client sometimes may not want to deal with 5-6 people. They want to tell you as the project manager, and then have the trust in you for you to go ahead and hire all your subs and get everything working systematically. But as the project manager now, when you take on that project now, that's when you now have your second meeting, your second level meeting, and call in all the trades and say, we're meeting on the 25th, and everybody, we're going to go through and tell everybody, this is our expectation for the project. This is a time frame for the project. You typically in those meetings don't discuss the budget. You discuss that budget with every trade independently, so that you guys have your agreement, your contract drawn up, and now you guys have your scope of work, your expectation, your timeline, which is going to be different from the timeline that you have with the owner of the building. So everybody now has their own scope of work, their own obligation list, their own everything that covers all that's going on. And that's now when you, as the project manager, the one managing the project, now lay down all your obligations so that your subcontractors now know this is what we expect, this is the time frame we expect it in. We're trying to open the building, the house, have it listed for sale on this particular time, and any kind of subs that you end up hiring, you need to make sure that they're on the same understanding as you, because sometimes you hire a sub and they're not there because they're busy. They have other projects going on. So their workers, their helpers, or their subcontractors are there working. You may not, have direct contact with them. You may just be there making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do and things like that is working. So you want to make sure that they have a clear understanding that this particular room gets hardwood floor, not laminate floor. The laminate may be in the bathroom. It may be in the storage room. It may be in certain different areas that we don't mind that this particular floor goes because of budget. Because everything on the project is skewed towards the budget of the project. The project cost must always be mindful of, must always be adhered to, because you'll have a stoppage in your project. So you want to make sure that you come in everything on time and on budget. And that's why I say that miscellaneous budget comes into play, because towards the later half of the project, you might have had some problems here and there, and now you need to make some executive decision as to how do we finish this project. Do we spend the money and get this because everything else is out of stock? Your first light is not available. Your second light is not available. Now it's the third, and there wasn't a third. The third is now what is available according to the scheme of the project. The color scheme or the scheme of if it's an office. You're trying to rent it to a doctor or a lawyer or whoever you're trying to rent it to. The flooring makes a difference. So now your third option, you need to substitute the two initial go-tos or the two initial things that you agreed on, and they're not available. So you now need to make the third decision, and the builder homeowner is not available. So all of these things need to be clearly stipulated, and as early as possible as you can buy and stock your material. Make sure you do those things. That's why as a contractor, having storage at your house, the basement, having a trailer attached to your truck, things that are waterproof or not rain sensitive, you can put in the truck of your bed of your truck, or that, because sometimes the job site is not secure. It's in the early stage of the building. Typically what we do is when we get onto the project, the framing is already done, the wall is already there pretty much, unless it's something from what we call slab up, which is there's no ground, no nothing, just dirt, and we're there to run some electrical pipes through the dirt to stub it up into the room that the house is, or the foundation is going to be poured on, and we have no place to store the material. So oftentimes I store it in the vehicle, or sometimes store it at the house. Because especially in these times where you get the material, you need to get the material, because when you're ready for it, you're driving to 4 or 5 different stores. You're on the phone for an hour calling around, and they think they say they have it, and you get there and they don't. Sometimes they're going by the computer, they're going by the reader in their hand, but do your above and beyond. Ask them, can you please go to the aisle? Can you please go to where that product is supposed to be and double check for me and make sure that you do have it. If you only have 2 or 3, can you please, what's your name? Can you please put that aside for me at the customer service? Because sometimes they're going to be off shift when you get there. They might be on lunch when you get there. So, that's for you to now tighten up your contracting business and make sure that, you do your above and beyond, because you'll get there and they might have 3 or 4 in the computer, but when you get there isn't any. 1 or 2 a floor is the display, and sometimes they're not. You might want to buy the display depending on what it is, but they're not. It's an item they stock, so they're not trying to sell you the display. Some places might sell you the display because they know they're going to get new ones in and replace that, but it's all situational, as most things are. So you want to make sure you put yourself in a good situation for your project to be running good, your project to be running smooth, your project to be running on time. These are things that really mean a lot to your client. As much as possible, make sure your project is running smooth. Make sure your project is running on time. Make sure you're adhering to all the schedules, all the objectives that you and the client spoke about, that you sat down, you wrote down in your notes, you detailed, and you're having no glitches in your project. Instantly now the client has you as the person to call for their next project and their next project, and then as a default, now they're recommending you to their other friends who are builders, and they're saying, hey, I got a guy who can project manage for you. He has great subcontractors that he bring in, and they'll take care of your project in a timely manner. We recently did a house for a contractor who's a general contractor, and he was buying his house, and what he did was reach out to all his contractor network and said, listen, I need some people to come in here and help me redo my house. It was pretty much a rewire. It was a rewire, new AC, adding some walls and taking down some walls to add insulation all around the front, the outer walls. So it was a lot, and it was a time constraint too as well. So he reached out to his contacts and his network, and we were able to get in there and get that to the point where it was habitable, where he can move in within 20 days. And that was because he had a good network of contractors and subcontractors that were tried and true, that he worked with before, that he knew would provide a great quality, timely service for his build. So what happens with that now? Every project that he works on going forward, he know that these are my tried and true contractors and subcontractors to reach out to, and now the process goes. It's a rinse and repeat. You go walk the job site with the client. You hear all their needs in a clear manner. You write down all of their needs, everything that you guys that they express, all of their requirements, all of their expectations, the start time, the midway time, and the finish end date. And you always want to have a status update meeting with, as the project manager, you want to have that with all of your subcontractors no less than once a week. Even if the project is going to be 6 months, a year, or however long the project is, you want to have a status meeting every week. You want to have it you want to have even phone calls 2-3 times a week. Hey, it could be 5 minutes. Hey, how you doing? Just checking on you, making sure that you're good, everything is okay. Yes, everything is good, everything is okay. All right, I'll talk to you later. You don't really have to make them feel like you're looking over their shoulders or stressing, but that goes a long way, because one, they know that you care about the project, because they might need materials, they might need something, and they were just so busy they didn't get a chance to call you. And while you call them, now they can say, oh yeah, by the way, we're short 10 2x4s for over here, or we need 10 more sheets of drywall. They didn't have any arc fault breakers when I went to the store, so if you can, certain little things, those you just have your status check in, and then find out, is everything going well? Is everything on schedule? Is everything on time? Because that's your job as a project manager, is to manage that project and make sure. But you're doing yourself a service. You're making sure you're showing that contractor, that builder, that homeowner, that you can manage the project, that you wasn't just there to get their money and produce when you feel like producing. That should not be what you're there to do. And, all we're doing is trying to give you some tried and true guidance. You're going to run your project however you see fit. You're going to keep it moving however you feel like keeping it moving. We're just trying to give you some tried and true strategies, especially to the ones that are starting out, because you don't want to develop any bad habits when you're starting out. You're going to hear all these tried and true so-called people that's been doing it long tell you, hey, this is this and that is that. But a lot of those things they're telling you are shortcuts. A lot of those things they're telling you are things that if you're not fully versed in how to navigate that, it's going to make a real big problem for you, because they've done it so long that if there's a glitch when they do that, they know how to pivot. You may not know. You just think it's going smooth because, hey, oh my goodness, I can do this. But then if that don't work out, now what do? Because all you knew was A, you don't know B, C, or D, So try to never cut the shortcut. Stick to some tried and true principles, because as you get that running systematic, as you get that going great and moving, and you have your tried and proven strategies, your crew that is tried and true, now you're a project manager on the next level. You don't have to worry about anything. You get a project, you meet a client at a job site, you do your walkthrough, you take your notes, you send them the quote, they agree on the quote, they give you that initial deposit so that you can now start to hire your subs and get them their deposits, so now they can start to either hire their subs, or now they can start to secure the material needed to start your project. Typically, how we do it with a lot of what I speak on is the electrical field. We typically meet with our clients. We give them on the project site. Oftentimes, it's not from the slab up. I have a project coming up now where it's going to be actually from the slab up, And we got another thing that we're implementing where we're bringing out, where we're going to have some video updates on the iramble.com website, where we're showing you these weekly updates on our projects that we're working in, so you can start to see some of these things being implemented from an electrical standpoint, so you can see that how this project management kind of goes. And I say kind of because it may not be a full hour-long video of the project, but it'll be just updates. So this is how the project looked when we started out. This is the midway. This is the finished project. And we're gonna just give you different updates. And all these things, what we want to do is don't run chase a bag. You get you a briefcase because you're a professional. You're on another level. You know, there's different. You need to be able to put your papers in your briefcase. You know, you're out chasing a bag. You put the papers in the bag, it's going to wrinkle up and look unprofessional. So now when you sit down at a meeting, you can't sit down with that bag. You know, you unzip the bag and put the paper on there. The corners are folded up. No, you're chasing briefcase money. You're a professional out here. You're a whole business, you know what I mean? So it's a different level of thinking when you're operating on that. And that's what we're trying to give you the advice on. There's always ways to level up in what you're doing. Don't stay stagnant. Always try to move forward, move on, be professional in your wording of things you say, words of power. So make sure you're speaking positivity on your job site. Make sure you're speaking the proper terminology on your job site. Don't own no negative thoughts. Don't own no negative verbiage. All things are positive. Oh my gosh, we didn't get this. Okay, what can we do to rectify it? Because you know what? When I speak to the client, I don't need to just tell them to read excuses or tell them this, that. I need to have options. I need to have the fix. You can always have the problem, but make sure when you're discussing it with your client, you also have the solution. You'd be surprised how much that means a lot to the client because they're already thinking about that. Once you walk to them with the problem that you're having, once you walk to them with whatever glitches or whatever what have you going on with the project, they want to make sure that you have the solution as well, so that they know that you're what? Solution oriented, that you're goal oriented, that you're on track to finish the project on schedule. You know, you're not counting to the client expecting them to fix this problem. They brought you on to be able to do that. They brought you on as a project manager to make sure any problems, any glitches, they trust you to be able to fix, handle, and solve it. If you're mentioning it to them, it's because they probably came to the job site and saw it, or it was such a level of a decision that had to be made that you reached out to them. Because oftentimes when you have glitches and problems, you've rectified it and fixed it and solved it before you actually brought it to your client. So but when you're having your weekly meetings and you're having your updates with your clients, they might ask you certain questions that you might need to know the answers to, you know. So that's another reason why, as the project manager, you definitely go to your job site to make sure that all the things that you know are being done are done. You may trust the guy or girl or whoever you have out there working on your project, building your project, but you need to know for yourself that these things are done or are being done. And then maybe when you go out to your project, you may see something that might be a problem down the road. No one is perfect. You know, I'm not a master electrician. I network with masters, and anything I'm unsure about, I do my research online, I do my due diligence, and then I might call them and ask them a question. Have you ran into this, that, and the third? You know, because I'm trying to avoid glitches, or I'm trying to make sure I have the answers for my project manager. So when they say, oh, well, if we're not able to install this Insta-Hot because, you know, the store didn't have this or that, or the space isn't conducive, what can we do? You know, we had an issue on one of our projects where the plumber wasn't able to put the washer and dryer where we all agreed on. But that was because they hadn't gone underneath the house or the crawl space at that time to find out whether they can extend their plumbing to the back of the room where it was agreed it would go. So we installed our electrical on the other side where we agreed upon. But once they went underneath the house to the crawl space, they weren't able to extend the pipe because the house didn't extend that far, or they weren't able to. But we had already installed our electrical over there, so now it becomes a double work for us, or is it going to be a cost for the homeowner to move it? We didn't charge them for that particular thing, but and we were able to reuse the length of wire that we had used to just extend it to the other side of the room with no glitches and no problem, other than the double work. But because it was a good contractor that we worked for before, we didn't say, well, there's going to be an additional cost for double work, because we had agreed that that's where it was going to go. And it's going to now take time for me or my helper or my guys to now do that when they were supposed to be doing something else. So that's why clear clarification, clear understanding between the trades, and as the project manager, you make sure everybody's adhering to that. That's where those things go a long, long way, because of problems that may arise like that was not thought to be a problem when you initially spoke on it, but now it arose. What are you going to do? You need to be able to pivot in all that you do. That's one of the number one tools of an entrepreneur, is to have your pivot game on 100. That's where your knowledge, that's where your tried and true comes into play. That's where your resources come into play. That's where your networking come into play. I had an issue too, same project as well. I was changing out the meter, and we took the lugs out of there, and we were planning, and we did temporary power, and we were planning to change the meter out the next day. We got there the next day, they had demoed the whole area where we was, and they threw away all the materials that was in there. My fault. I should have put that in the truck. I should have put that somewhere else, but it's neither here nor there. We had to find that, and that meter was outdated. They no longer use those meters. The meter is actually recessed in the wall of the house. That's no longer code. So, I reached out to some of my resources to see if they had any old meters like that in their storage, or where I could find one. One contractor said, hey, go online and see if you can type in vintage meter and see if you can order one and get it shipped overnight. All of these different things, but long story short, I ended up having to go buy a whole new meter base at the supply house. But what the benefit of that was the inner workings of the meter was changeable. So the new lugs are not bolted on per se. To give you an idea, they're kind of slide on and then tightened, where the leverage of tightening it holds it, as opposed to the bolt, which is much more. It's a better process now, obviously, with updates and things like that. But I couldn't find the older version, but I was able to pivot and find one that could work. So we just changed the inner workings of that meter base, and then we were able to get it situated. So you got to be able to navigate, and that's what like I said, that's what the networking. I was able to reach out to a couple of people who's in the field, and they were able to give me advice on what they've done, and what they saw, and what could work, and what have you. But as the electrical project manager on that, I had to be able to make those decisions. I had to be able to rectify any issues or problem that I had on the job site in terms of the electrical, and make sure that the job works systematic, make sure everything works in conjunction with the goals of the client. And that particular job, the client, why we decided not to change that, to just give you a little further feedback on that, was we reached out to the power company to get a walkthrough, and that's one of the things that you can do. You call your local power company and ask them, can you schedule a walkthrough for placement of the electrical meter? Because I've done that a couple of times, because the homeowner would have liked the electrical panel to be the electrical meter, the outside part of the electrical service, to be on one particular side of their house, as opposed to where the old original one was. So we called the power company and we asked them, hey, can you come out and give us a walkthrough, or can you come out and see whether it's okay for you guys to move this meter over here, because that's where the homeowner would like it to go or prefer it to be. They came and and gave us the walkthrough and said no, we weren't be able to put it over there for a lot of different reasons, where we would have to get into it to give you to for it be another half an hour just explaining that part of the program. But long story shorter, they said no, we couldn't put it there, had to go on the original side of the house. And one of the main reasons was the length of the feeding wire that was coming from the light post would reach that side of the house, but it wouldn't reach the other side of the house. And if they did move it, they would have to move it to another light post, and he had a tree that was in the way of it, so now he'd have to remove the tree branches. It was going to be a whole to-do, and they wasn't ready to do any of that at the time, so we ended up leaving it within that one day. Within the day, we changed out took the lugs out, put temporary power to it. And the next day, the decision was, well, we're not going to move that. And then, like I said, they had moved the demo onto that part of the house. Lugs were thrown out. So make sure if you remove anything when you're doing your demo as part of the subcontracting crew, that you store those things in a place where you might for just in case purposes. Certain things, you're just going to throw away because you can't use them per the new codes. But certain parts, just be mindful that you just don't throw them away. Even if you have a box on the side of the job where you just put some of these parts in. And on this particular job, we ended up developing that, where before we threw everything into the dumpster, which they did have on the job site, we just stored everything kind of off to the side, and then assess where. If we need to throw it away now because we've upgraded and we're not going to use that particular thing anymore, then and we go from there. But you definitely want to make sure, I can't stress enough how important it is during that initial walkthrough to have your notepad and your pen. Make sure your pen works. Bring 2 or 3 pens with you. Your notepad is going to work because it's paper. But that pen, the ink might not roll through like you'd like it to. Have a backup pen. There's just little details that goes a long way that you just don't realize that your client is paying attention to. And being prepared, being well groomed, being hygienic, being meticulous, waiting till the customer explains their needs, then ask your questions. Ask for clarification if need be. Don't be afraid to, because what you're trying to avoid as the project manager is any confusion, any double work, anything that might cause the budget to be off. That's one of your main goals. Your goal is to make sure it's done in a timely manner, and safety is also paramount. You want to make sure all your crews are working safe. Your job is being handled in a proper manner. And like I said, what we used to do is once we got on the job, we found a room or area where we can properly store our materials, and everyone on the job site knows the electrical material is over there. Be it the bathroom, be it one of the bedrooms, be it the closet in by the front door. Well, that's not really ideal, but somewhere where you can secure all your materials is where you want to find. And you'll find that that's just a tried and true thing. As you work on a job site, you'll see the plumbers have an area where all of the pipe is laid up over there, and the fittings is in a big old box over there. HVAC, they got the duct and all of those things are over there on one side, vents and things like that. And we try to make sure we have a box with all of our electrical materials in there, and stuff like that is stored off to the side. And just making sure that you're taking a material list on a consistent basis to make sure that you're not running out of material. And if you're running out of material, you know whether you need any of that for the rest of the job or you're going to need some more of it. So always have a notepad handy for those things as well. You're listening to your client, you're writing down everything they have, you're clarifying, you're making sure they said that there's not laminate floor, it's tile that's going through here. this particular room gets this, that particular room gets that. You just want to make sure, as the person in charge of the project management, you do your above and beyond. You're making sure your inspections are scheduled. You're making sure that you reach out to your crew and your subcontractors. Hey, are you ready for your inspection? Hey, should I schedule it for Friday? You sure you're going to be ready for your Friday inspection? Let me know. And this is Monday, you're calling them and asking them this. Wednesday again, you're checking, hey, look, I'm just following up with you. You need any materials for Friday's inspection? I had a contractor email when they messaged me. They messaged me, and it had a calendar appointment that popped up right next to it. I hadn't seen that before, and I thought that was fantastic. Hey, inspection is scheduled for Friday, and I started getting the reminders on it. So if you're familiar and things like that, just make sure you, as the project manager, you're reaching out to them, having a weekly meeting to make sure everything is going according to your schedule. Your guys don't need any material. The inspections are scheduled. They're ready for their scheduled inspections, because once these inspectors come out and start to do their due diligence, which is their job, they want to make sure everything is going good, everything is going fine, and everything is timely. And you'll have some inspectors that walk into the job site, do a look around, and they're good because they know that by working with you before, or by the looks of this job, they know that everything else in the attic or underneath the crawl space pretty much looks the same. So they'll walk in there 10 minutes, they'll walk in there 5 minutes, look around, look at this, look at that, open up the meter, or open whatever they need to look at, and okay, you're good to go. Inspection passed, and that's what you want. The very first time you schedule an inspection, you want to make sure you pass that inspection. It goes a long way for your client, and it goes a long way for your inspector, because you're building a relationship, you're building a network. And as a project manager, you want to make sure that you're hiring and empowering people that you know is going to be safe, it's going to be timely, it's going to be on budget, and it's going to be done the right way the first time, every time. So thank you for allowing us to ramble with you. We hope some of that, or any of that, or all of that, you can add to your briefcase and help your project to run smooth, help your project to be on time, and overall make sure your project is safe, and overall that you make sure you're doing a great job for your client. It's all about your client. It's never about you as the project manager, as the subcontractors, the architect, the designer, or any of that. It's always all about your client.